Time for the market report. Row crops falling in price.
And we'll take a closer look at them this week. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then U.S. crop progress. How are the major crops looking so far? And finally, an expert on Mississippi corn weighs in. So, markets closed on the downswing, all commodities affected. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, soybean oil, up over 3.5 cents. That's more than a 5% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, wheat, down 36.5 cents. That is more than a 5.5% decrease from the previous week. So why are prices going down? Well, one reason is oversupply due to several good harvests. And it looks like we're in for another one. Here's the latest crop progress report to explain. In the latest crop progress report, in the 18 highest corn producing states, planting 93% complete, 1% higher than this time last year and the 5-year average. Corn emerged at 76%, the same as this time last year and 2% higher than the 5-year average. Condition mostly too early to determine, but so far looking good with 95% reporting fair to excellent. In the 18 highest soybean planting states, Mississippi included, planting 87% complete, 4% higher than this time last year and 7% higher than the 5-year average. Soybeans emerged at 65%, 4% higher than this time last year and 8% higher than the 5-year average. Condition also looking positive, with 95% also reporting fair to excellent. In the 15 highest cotton producing states, Mississippi also included, planting 66% complete, 2% higher than last year, but 1% lower than the 5-year average. Squaring, which is the forming of the bulbs that will eventually become bolls, at 7%, the same as last year and the 5-year average. In the 6 highest rice-producing states, Mississippi included, planting 98% complete, 2% higher than this time last year and 1% higher than the 5-year average. Rice emerged at 87%, the same as last year, but 2% higher than the 5-year average. Rice condition, like corn and soybeans, looking good, with 95% reporting fair to excellent. So let's focus on one of those commodities, corn. Here in Mississippi, it's our number 2 row crop and therefore very important to our economy. So how are things looking and how can farmers keep their crops in top shape? Extension Corn Specialist Dr. Erick Larson has some advice.
Well, we're reaching tasseling stage and we've been raining for the past, I don't know how many, since middle of last week anyway. A lot of growers are waiting to put out their tassel application of corn and are concerned about timing of that tassel application of corn, of urea, because the corn is tasseling now and they really don't have favorable conditions for application to occur during the weather that we have right now with saturated fields, water standing everywhere. That's not conducive to strong nitrogen management, and most folks know that, but they've got a conundrum because the crop is at tassel stage. So is tassel stage really that critical to apply that nitrogen at? And my answer is 99% of the time it is not. We've already applied our normal application up to that time frame. The corn is only utilizing about 60 to 65% of its seasonal nitrogen at that time, and a application at tassel is purely to supplement and make sure that they don't run out before the end of the season. So if that's the case, then the timing coinciding or being pre-tassel, literally we call this application the pre-tassel application, it's not dependent to be pre-tassel unless we're deficient at that time, and it's rare that is the case. So we have ample time after tasseling. There's actually some advantages to put it out after tassel. You'll actually probably increase your seasonal efficiency because you're putting it out and you're avoiding the conditions that we're having this week. That's the whole purpose of putting out a mid-season application or at tassel application, is to avoid wet weather and soil saturation, which leads to catastrophic nitrogen losses during the course of the season. So applying it after tassel will help avoid some of that. You actually don't have a whirl present any longer after tassel, so that you don't have as much leaf burn associated with a granular application from an airplane, because you don't have a whirl intercepting the large number of granules and collecting that and causing that leaf burn. The other question I get a lot is, well, what about pollination? Is the granules going to burn the silks and cause an issue with pollination on parts of the ear? And again, the answer is no. the primary thing there is, despite burning a few silks on the corn plant, I've literally taken this with an undergraduate student a couple years ago and went out in the morning and clipped all the silks off of an ear of corn, came to the Delta, came back 12 hours later, and they'd go, how long do you think those silks are going to be at the end of the day after 12 hours? They'd grown nearly 1.5 inches over that 12-hour period. So the amount of the amount of burn that a single or several granules could cause there is fairly inconsequential, because the silks simply continue growing over the time period until they get pollinated. So that's not going to be a limiting factor as far as pollinating those individual kernels on a corn plant.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets.